All right, Emily, thank you. Nebraska's Medical Cannabis Commission met again today, starting with updates to the commission's membership. Governor Pillen added 2 new members to the Liquor Control Commission earlier this month, Robert Bud Sinhorst and James Elworth, bringing the commission to 5. They had the typical public comment period to begin, then had a listening session of invited manufacturers to speak. One of those manufacturers gave suggestions as to what commissioners should look for in manufacturers.
They have to have controls in place that are repeatable and consistent. They have to ensure that we're getting good quality medicine to the patients consistently, like you would on any other pharmaceutical.
Krista Eggers of Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana submitted an appeal for her cultivator license. She and Casey Sledge's appeals were both denied. She told First Alert 6 2 more cultivator applications were drawn and denied as well. They have 10 days to appeal. Those will be heard at the next meeting.